Guys, man, I'm here with your gamer goggles. We're at Gen Con day something or another. I have no idea. I'm lost already. This is day two, so it's Friday. And I'm with the crew from Arc Dream Publishing. And we have Shane, Greg, and Scott. We're going to talk about Delta Green. It's been around a while, but they recently had some new success with it. So, where do you want to start? I mean, I actually am new to Delta Green, so I don't know a lot about it.
You want me to go? You want to go?
Go for it.
Delta Green is a permutation of Call of Cthulhu that suggests that the federal government knows about the mythos and is, in its own way, trying to do stuff about it. And since the raid on Innsmouth, there have been government agents looking into the weird stuff and shooting and burying it to the best of their ability. And there are a number of internal conflicts that are developing.
Like any group of people or organization, it's been around since 1928. It keeps changing. It's gone through different permutations over the years, so that players can actually play different styles of game. We've got Pelgrane Press working on a 1960s version of the game where the players get to experience a very 1960s Cold War spy agency feel of Delta Green. When we did it
using the Trail of Cthulhu rules, like an offshoot of Trail of Cthulhu.
When we originally did it, set in the 90s, we were most concerned about game balance in Call of Cthulhu. The whole point of Call of Cthulhu was weak investigators versus strong opponents, and going straight at things, relying on firepower, kick door, hit orc with sword, never worked in the Call of Cthulhu setting. That was always something to get you killed, and we didn't want to blow that balance of having the players be less powerful than the opposition and have to always use their brains to get out of things. So the iteration in the 90s was that the 60s agency has been disbanded and defunded, and it's just people who used to be in the federal government who are still functioning as a conspiracy to continue doing investigations. So the players had a very...
Because the alternative was unspeakable.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we can either break the law or we can roll over and let, unspeakable horror just treat us like a buffet.
Yeah. So that was sort of the iteration in the 90s, was the sort of former members all underground, and were much weaker, and the players kept that Call of Cthulhu feel, where while they were part of a bigger group and while they had some resources, it didn't become a game where you sat in an office, took some phone calls, and then ordered a drone strike, and then the problem was solved. We didn't want to go that way. We've now moved into a new era, where there are new things for people to be afraid of, where maybe the players can push a button and have a drone strike happen, and it might not be in their best interests.
It's a little scary, actually.
Yeah. When we first started developing the new game, that was one of our first big conversations, and it's a conversation we've been having for a while, which is we're squarely in the War on Terror and the post-War on Terror world now, and that completely reshaped the way that the federal government worked, the way that the government exercised authority, our relationship with our own government, the way that we approached dangerous physical threats abroad and at home. And so obviously we can't just ignore that. So that has to kind of inform the way that we have players playing characters who are in that world and using that world to fight these horrible supernatural menaces and getting murdered by them.
The worst thing we could have done would be to have the game be less bleak than reality.
Which is a point. It's been a challenge. It's a challenge.
It's a tall order. Every time I think that we've hit the peak bleak, reality goes ahead and just pushes it up a little higher for us.
Yeah. So with for instance, with these days, everybody knows we're drone striking people left and right all over the world, right? And that's a thing that you can do if you're in the government in the counterterrorism sphere. So the instinct for a lot of Delta Green players naturally is, oh God, I know where that cult is. Bring me my predator. So the challenge that we have here is making sure that we make it really clear that there's costs that come with that you don't just get carte blanche, because everything that you do that pulls in some other resource
You realize that's what we call a war crime.
Well,
Are you cool with that?
Because most players are.
Yeah.
But
This is true.
the real problem from our perspective, and that we want, what we kind of encourage game masters to address or to bring to the fore, is exposure. Unless you're physically the guy transporting the Reaper from a warehouse, to a launching whatever strip, and you're the one, your team is the one piloting the thing and loading the Hellfires onto it and handling the software and doing the IT support when the software inevitably malfunctions and doing all that huge panoply of thing. There's this massive infrastructure of people that are aware of every operation that we do in counterterrorism, and the whole point of Delta Green is every person who becomes aware of these threats is put at risk of them in a way that's unnatural, that's supernatural. It's like handling radiation or something. And so that's the big challenge that we try to communicate is, okay, you have potentially access to these resources. How much is it going to actually exacerbate the threat long term when you bring them into play?
Yeah, and that was something I've tried to really work into the material I've worked on for it, is that Delta Green is obsessed with compartmentalization, and this idea that if you combine these pieces of knowledge, we don't know what's going to happen, but it's always been bad in the past, and yet at the same time, these may be the pieces of knowledge you need to survive or to counter the threat. And so there's a lot of, why can't you tell me this? Because then you'd know it. And once you know it, it might combine with something else and suddenly you're the mission.
The original Call of Cthulhu rules definitely heavily push the idea that the more you understand what the problem is, through a skill point called your Cthulhu Mythos Knowledge skill. The higher that goes up, the more you have the ability to know what the problem is and how to counter it, the more it erodes your character personally. You don't get stronger, you get weaker, because the more you know.
I was going to ask that.
You become
you
more
have a sanity
vulnerable.
score, and it goes down the more you interact with the supernatural.
It's a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
The more you understand the unnatural, the less able you are to interact normally with
Other people.
The real world. Yeah.
the human scale.
And so gameplay ultimately is about that tightrope, of walking that tightrope of engaging enough with the threat to try to counter the threat while not being so affected by it that you lose total control of your character. And that's what, and in Delta Green, we've tried to kind of tighten that up and amp that up in a lot of ways, even above and beyond how Call of Cthulhu has always done it, by adding, sort of focusing on characters, not only your internal sanity and how well you can relate to reality, but your relationships in the world and your kind of
that's
characters
really one of the
in PC. Like your family, your close friends, the people that need you and count on you are a source of strength.
The first game I've seen where the average player character was not an orphan raised by ninjas, with no family connections.
No,
and
that's been around for a while, but I like how it's implemented here.
Yeah.
So it's
It's part of the mechanics, though.
But it's another resource that gets whittled away. We have rules that are fairly extensive that are pretty much purely optional but are there if you need them, about dealing with equipment, and I was thinking of like the equipment and resources and assets and all that. So we have guidelines for bringing those into play, but everything that you try to draw on as a resource comes with the cost. It comes with a threat, And so my friends, when I was running the game, one of my friends said that he kind of had this epiphany as he was playing that he's like, Jesus, everything on here that makes my character great is like a danger to my character. Every asset that we have, yeah, absolutely. So every resource that you can bring to bear also comes with costs to your character, and that comes out in gameplay. So the way it plays, it took a lot of honing and playtesting to kind of get it to really sing the way that we kind of want it to. But the way it plays at the table, especially in long-term games, is really satisfying if that's your scene.
Although I've been running mostly one-shots because I'm playtesting a series of them, and it works well there too. the trick with Delta Green, the trick with horror gaming is that to scare someone, you always have to, disempower them in some way. And in a lot of games, in a lot of horror games, and this is probably the traditional Call of Cthulhu model, is, your investigators are weedy college professors. That's the stereotype. And so they start out a little disempowered.
You're playing Lovecraft, but less racist.
Yeah, and then you and then you see the Shoggoth, and everyone goes home. And in this one, the player characters the agents have a lot of temporal power. You badge someone, say, "I'm from the FBI. I'm gonna need to." Yeah, people react. You have this tremendous social power. You have, you can play a character who is at the peak of military fitness and capable of killing someone with a single shot from a half-mile away. And so you start out thinking, you know better, but you're still like, okay, no, this is a person who's capable and can get things done. And then you see the Shoggoth and everyone goes home.
One of my favorite moments in Delta Green games, and I love it because it keeps playing out exactly the same way, is at the beginning of an operation when the players start asking what kind of resources they have. Okay, so we have pistols, right? Yeah, of course. Okay, can I get a submachine gun? Yeah, you have connections for that. Oh, geez, can I get some hand grenades? You're from the military, you know some blood. Sure. Can I get a rocket launcher? Yeah, that would be great. That's going to be really entertaining. The more you say yes, you can kind of tell. You can kind of tell the players' expectations of hope and joy are sort of diminished the more you let them have, because they know what's facing them is so awful.
Break the scenario. It's like the realization. Wait, you mean a rocket launcher won't break the scenario?
Yeah. That realization of oh, geez, what are we up against? Sure, isn't this where you told me I can't have the Vorpal sword because that would unbalance the encounter? Oh, you can have that. That's going to be fun.
Want a couple of scorpion tanks?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that sort of happened in Cold Dead Hand, where the players were all playing Russian Spetsnaz commandos who are just loaded up with this enormous, all this heavy gear, and they're in armored vehicles,
including a tactical nuclear suitcase.
Yeah, and they have a tactical nuclear briefcase.
Yeah,
with them.
like once you can tell them you have the TAC nuke on your character sheet.
Yeah, you have a TAC nuke.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's when you go find a new game, guys.
But it's great, People love it. They love the suspense, the challenge. That sense
mordant
of
humor.
The mordant humor is a big deal. Absolutely.
When they give you the end of the world, though, I mean,
it's not the end of the world; it's the end of your world.
Hey, just
anyone within 5,000
Just
meters.
because you have a TAC nuke doesn't mean you have to use it.
Well, I think that's exactly wrong. I think if you're a player character, you're going to put that on the bucket list.
I don't know. That could be a great role-playing experience.
Oh yeah, especially at those con games where everybody knows they're
It's a
about to
race to
leave.
set it off.
That's right.
We got 4 hours. That nuke is going off
Right.
at 3:59:59.
Yeah.
Or I didn't have a good time. That's it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about the targets, because they're cool.
All right.
Yeah, we got. Pardon me while I'm checking my phone because it keeps buzzing distractingly.
So how do the targets play into the game?
They don't.
They're just
They play
cool.
into the gun range.
Right.
You go to your gun range. So far, has anyone reported that the gun range objected to the targets?
Well, no, because what we did is that there are certainly some states where there are very sharp restrictions on what you can shoot at a gun range. So like one of the targets we have is a gray, the little alien, and that's a very humanoid target. And if you take that to a gun range in California, for instance, it's totally off limits because they do not want you shooting at things that look like people. But we have some others that are clearly just like insectoid monsters that are a lot more palatable in a lot more places.
Creature from the Black Lagoon doesn't exactly have a big, lobby in Sacramento, so we're allowed to shoot. We're allowed to shoot the deep ones. That's fine.
Right. So, I got those printed a couple of years ago. Really, pretty much as a lark. I just thought it would be kind of amusing to have them on hand. So we have a bunch of them.
But they sell well, don't they?
They've been moving.
They do.
It's you've got a lot of gamers that are really kind of that are really really anti-gun, and so there's political angles that come into play. But for the most part, people that are coming to Delta Green tend to have the same kind of bleak view of the world that we do. And so
there hasn't been a lot of finger wagging at us about the target.
No. I've never actually shot at one. My wife is a police officer, so I don't really have an excuse for not having gone to a range and shot at one. But
well, I only had the ones I got last Gen Con. I'm like, I'm not damaging these. I need to find a way to frame them,
yeah.
put them up on walls or something. You know, maybe after I shoot them, that would be best. I just shoot
yeah.
Precious.
the target, then frame them.
Right.
Maybe
Right,
that's
there
the
you
way to go.
So, okay, where do you want to start then? You want to start with the rule book, the agent book,
Yeah. So.
or the adventure path over there?
Well,
or is that
this is the Unspeakable Oath, which is our magazine.
Oh, this is a magazine. Okay.
Yeah, and it's been in publication off and on for 25 years, 26 years. But it's been like 2 or 3 years since the last issue, which is entirely on me.
That never happened when Pagan Publishing. Ever.
You could set your watch by the...
Well,
So what's the goal then for this? Is it yearly, quarterly?
Technically it's quarterly, but really it winds up being more like an annual or semi-annual. It's very irregular.
When there was nothing else on the plate, and it was about buy-in. It would be about twice a year.
But things slip. We're in the process of and by we I mainly mean me because I don't have these guys worrying about it.
Is this all work by the three of you, or is this fan based?
Well, they certainly contribute. So I'm the editor-in-chief of the Unspeakable Oath, and
Right.
so I kind of am in charge of it under license from Pagan Publishing, which is Scott's company, right? Which originally published it, but Scott contributes to every issue. Greg contributes to I think every issue we've done so far since we relaunched it, and we have other authors, other game designers and writers who are writing. So it's about Cthulhu Mythos horror gaming, which has been traditionally mostly Call of Cthulhu, but since we relaunched it a few years ago, we've done Cthulhu Dark articles, Trail of Cthulhu articles. Delta Green originally had its beginnings as an Unspeakable Oath adventure back in '93, I think. 92 maybe. And we cover a lot of material in it, but it's really fun. We do our best to get
The art's good.
absolutely top-notch
The art is really good.
authors to do it. That one was Todd Shearer, who's a friend of mine that I go way back with. We work together.
Well, a lot of black and white publications don't have good art. This does.
Yeah. And so we get a lot of good. I work hard to get good art from Bradley McDevitt. Did a lot of the illustrations in that one, and he's done several issues for us.
Torrin Atkinson, is he still kicking art in?
No, not in a while. Torrin Atkinson is the lead singer for The Darkest of the Hillside Thickets, and he's an old friend of all of ours. So he pitched in the first couple of issues that we did, but he's been way too busy with music in his day job in animation to contribute.
Can't understand
to
why
all of our
someone
material.
would choose to be a rock star instead of illustrating a gaming magazine.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
None.
It makes no sense.
I couldn't do that.
So the other two things we've got with us are the Agent's Handbook. You want to pitch the Agent's Handbook?
Yeah, the Agent's Handbook is the core rules for the new launch of Delta Green, the role-playing game.
It looks like a very horrified James T. Kirk.
Well, I don't know that you want to tell Dennis Detweiler you think he looks like James T. Kirk, because right now his head has trouble getting through doorways as it is. It looks like.
It's so interesting to me because it's like a Rorschach test or something, because everybody says it's a different person, Like I initially was like, oh, that's obviously Krychek from the X-Files.
Actually, it reminds me more of the original Captain.
Yeah.
The hidden episode.
Yes. What's his name? It was James Slater.
The one that was pilot, yeah.
Yes, Jeffrey.
I don't know his name.
Yeah. So the Agent's Handbook is the core rules of the game. Creating characters, how the game mechanics work, how sanity works, how your bonds work,
And
everything you need to actually play the game, run campaigns, you could use that to play through everything we've ever published for Delta Green in the past, because we worked really hard to make these rules easily compatible with everything else we've done for previous iterations of Call of Cthulhu. So it has big chapters on
government agencies.
agencies.
So if you want to play someone who's from the State Department, okay, well here's what your responsibilities would be as a State Department functionary, and here's what your limitations are, and here's
what the
advantages.
culture is like. And what
I'll admit that one of the weaknesses of the original Delta Green game that came out in like '96 was that the biggest question we always got from players was, well, how do I be an agent? How do I be a FBI agent? I mean, I don't know. And it always sort of the people who wrote it, myself and Dennis Detweiler and John Tynes, we had been so steeped in the genre that the question, how do you play an FBI agent, or how do you play a DEA agent, or a CIA agent? That question.
Doesn't everybody know that?
Yeah, that idea never even occurred to us because we were so deep in that kind of genre fiction. We just figured people would know. I mean, we knew obviously. So this version has actually fixed that problem rather nicely, where there's a lot of deep material on the culture and the culture of these agencies, the kind of people they attract, what kind in very broad general terms.
Our goal was for each of the agencies to have basically 2 to 4 pages of material in that vein, so that if you're a player, it's purely optional, right? You can make up an FBI agent in 10 minutes in these rules and start playing and go to town. If you're wanting to really dig deep and really get into your character's head, then we've got 2 to 4 pages for a lot of these agencies that kind of give you an overview of what it's like to work in this place. What kind of a day do you have? What did it take for you to get here? What is the difference between federal and state and local, jurisdiction for law enforcement? Because a lot of people are playing police officers, and not everybody has the benefit of the legal education and the fascination with crime that Scott and I have.
Some of these people have jobs.
Right. So
Some?
Legitimate jobs.
Right. So, so that was a lot of fun to bring together that part of the book. Even though there's a lot of gamers who are never going to touch it because it's reading, and gamers have a perverse aversion to homework. But the ones who
I haven't found that to be so true.
the ones who are into it, there's a lot of good material there, and those rules, the combat rules, the sanity rules, the bonds rules, all the sort of core things in it, we went to a lot of time and trouble, not just doing our own research and our own reading and all that, but also consulting with people in the world who live in that world, right? So we consulted with a lot of federal agents, intelligence officers, diplomats, military officers, combat veterans,
At least one
veterans affairs psychologists, who treat trauma. To really not to make it sort of a perfect like simulation of reality, but to make it really easy for you to evoke that reality in play, so that when your characters encounter the horrible, evil supernatural and are completely being threatened with obliteration by it, you feel like you're living in a lived-in world, and you're playing characters that make sense to you, and they make sense how they interact with the world around them. So you really, so when everything goes south and is miserable and horrifying, it hits you just a little bit that much harder.
Yeah, horror gaming is the closest that role-playing has come to classical tragedy, right? Mm-hmm. It's, this is how you tell a story about doom, about, an unavoidable negative outcome, and about trying to remain true to what's good about yourself in the face of, events that don't care about that, and that
demand you to violate everything that you think you like about yourself.
So the next item up for bid on The Price is Right is the magnificently awesome Game Master screen, which is
It's a hardback book, people.
Yeah, which is sold with this, the Need to Know supplement. This is a streamlined version.
Yeah, it's a 40. Need to Know is a 48 page. The booklet is a 48-page booklet that basically the first 12 pages of it are just a really concise distillation of the core rules of the game, and it also has half a dozen characters that are ready to play, equipped on both sides, and an adventure that's ready to play. So everything in that 48-page book is what you can take that, and within a couple of hours, you could be running an adventure.
Last Things Last by Brett Kramer.
Yep.
He's an awesome writer.
It's really good and creepy, and
Creepy.
yeah.
And straightforward, yes.
It's easy to run. It's not an adventure that has a lot of different moving parts and mysteries coming into it. It's meant to be easy and quick to run, but also to kind of let the game master and the players get a feel for exactly what this game's going to be like. And so you can tell, is this your thing? And if it is, then this is going to be your thing. And if it's not, then okay, that's good. There's room for all of us in the world.
Yeah, and it's straightforward, but it doesn't give the players much of a break.
Right.
Yeah. I'm saying it
requires you to investigate and dig around, and then punishes you for it viciously.
Yes, you're punished for your discoveries.
Whenever we say something's easy, we mean for the GM.
Right.
Yes. Of course.
Yeah. Pretty much most of the work we put into Delta Green is what would it be funny for us to do to players. That feels like the common thread.
In other words, it could be renamed GM's Revenge.
We have some people are meaner to their players than others. If you're out there, players, don't play any games that were written by Dennis Detweiler. if you're really attached to your character, you might want to try just rolling up a fresh character for that game. But if you've got a character you're really attached to, just detour around any Dennis Detweiler scenarios.
Poor Dennis.
Poor Dennis.
Everybody picks on Dennis and his vicious lethality.
I'm sorry, but his stuff is. He apparently came from the Tomb of Horrors school of punishing your players. It's brutal. It's pretty darn brutal.
I'll tell you my Tomb of Horrors background story later.
Okay. Everyone's
fun.
Everyone's got it.
Yeah.
Off the record.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Well, the next big thing is following on the Agent's Handbook. We are working on a larger, expanded version of the rule book, right? Which will have what's in the. Yeah, it's going to be a beast.
Fat bastard.
It's going to
500 pages?
It has, probably. It has everything that's in the Agent's Handbook as essentially like the first half of it, because it's also going to have tons of material for the Game Master about the setting, about the Cthulhu mythos, about magic and monsters, and most importantly, customizing all of those things so that you can keep your players guessing.
That your Lovecraft fiend player can immediately say, "Oh, that's got to be a star vampire."
Right. Yeah.
So
we want to be able to run games for each other, for instance, without it being obvious which page of the Call of Cthulhu rulebook this monster came from the first second you encounter it, And so that's going to play a large role in the big sort of core book. So eventually, the book Delta Green, the role-playing game, that's going to be that book, right? It's not out yet. That's a few months down the line. And then the Agent's Handbook technically is a supplement to that. But that material was core, and we've been working on it for years. And we knew we wanted it to be available to players as an option, as well. So we had kind of the luxury of putting it out first.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt to create a book for the players and the GM, because otherwise you've only sold one book to one gaming group.
Right.
Yeah.
Providing material so that the individual players can maximize their experience with the game with material that won't blow the mystery of peeling this onion, down to their inevitable doom. But they still have something that is a book that will again maximize the experience without giving away any of the spoilers, that's always a good product. It's gonna move.
So that's sort of the next big thing. At the same time, we're in the middle for various books in the middle of or in early stages of a whole line of Delta Green books that were funded by the Kickstarter that we ran last year. There's Control Group is a campaign that Greg wrote that's meant to be an introductory campaign to the system.
Well, it's not. Control Group's not so much a campaign as a string of one-off scenarios that should have been caught by Delta Green but went to, normal people instead. And each one of the 5 scenarios introduces you to more of the rules. So instead of having to digest the whole thing at once, the first scenario, it's like there's no possibility of combat here. The setting is on a space shuttle, so you're not going to get in a gunfight there. And the threat is, no more vulnerable to bullets than it is to bad language. So the first one is all just sand checks and skill rolls, and the second one
Sanity checks.
yes, and
the lingo.
the second one introduces the combat rolls. It's very combat heavy, but that's all you have to learn to run that one. And then the third one builds on that, where now instead of pre-generated characters, you're going to build your own characters, and so on and so forth. So that instead of having to learn the game all at once to run anything, you can do it in a phased fashion that kills a bunch of characters, but leaves a few struggling for life and sanity, and they can be recruited by Delta Green.
And that can be your kind of ongoing.
Yeah, my plan was for
campaign characters.
If you've never run a game before, you can do these 5, gradually get used to how the mechanics work, and at the end, you have this collection of single survivors who went through something terrible and are like, what happened? What happened to all my friends? What was that thing up on the satellite? Or what was that thing that we saw in Afghanistan?
And when you have that group
they
together,
never told us about that.
They can all die in Artifact Zero.
Yeah.
So we've got Control Group. Dennis is working on a campaign called Impossible Landscapes, which is all about the King in Yellow mythology of Robert Chambers, and so it's very surreal and frightening and ominous and
difficult
and
to fix
insane.
with machine guns.
Yeah, we've got a book that we haven't really started digging into yet. That's coming to the front burner, called Deep State, which is going to deal with. It's going to go into detail about a lot of the sort of secret world of the government that Delta Green works with and works within. So secret programs, secret counterterrorism programs, survivals of kind of the old majestic group, secret studies projects, and super science.
This is the one where you investigate enough to find out that our biggest enemy is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why did this guy I just shot have the same security clearance as I have?
Yeah.
That's going to be the deep state question.
Right. We've got a book called Pisces, which is about sort of the British equivalent of Delta Green, which has a long, very thorny relationship with Delta Green itself. So Scott's involved with Pisces. We have several of our friends in the UK who have been working with Pisces for a long time, who are going to be taking point on that. Adam Crossingham and Giles Hill, and what else? There's a lot more. What am I forgetting?
His Noden's book is coming.
The Noden's material will be released with some scenarios. It'll be a small book. It'll be like the need to know.
We've got a lot of adventures that we're doing as just standalone PDF downloads that are available.
I gotta keep trying to sell. Well, there's Caleb's God's Teeth.
Yeah, we'll eventually get to that. Our friends, we have friends with a podcast called Role Playing Public Radio, who play a lot of Delta Green and a lot of Godlike and Wild Talents and Monsters and Other Childish Things, a lot of Arc Dream games, and And so they played through last year a campaign that one of them, Caleb Stokes, wrote for Delta Green called God's Teeth, which they just finished the 7th and final installment of that, and it was absolutely terrific to listen to. So yeah, I'm kind of. Caleb's in the middle of fulfilling his own big Kickstarter that succeeded monumentally beyond his expectations, called Red Markets. But I'm still kind of making sure to occasionally put the thumb to him to tell him, hey, you're supposed to write something for me, right?
And
right? Didn't you say we were going to contract you to write something for me?
I keep trying to pitch Shane on the idea of doing a collection of scenarios that are all about green boxes.
About what?
All about green boxes.
Yeah, we've talked about that a few times. These sort of secret storage facilities.
So what a green box is, for the people who are not in the know, is that in the original game version of Delta Green, where it was an illegal and secret government conspiracy, they didn't have black sites, and but they had a lot of stuff that they just could not, that you didn't want around the house. And so the solution was the so-called green box, which is rent a shipping container or a storage unit for as long as you can, put it in there, lock it up as tight as you can, and
cross your fingers.
And cross your fingers. This was before Storage Wars was on. And so
I think in one of the fiction vignettes, a one-page fiction things in the Agent's Handbook, I called that the next best thing to tradecraft.
And so the problem is that the sort of organizational upheavals that are so central to the plot line of the new version, a lot of these just got lost and forgotten. So they're just out there like ticking time bombs of concentrated crazy, waiting for the contract to run out and for
The auctioneers to show
And
up.
to turn up on Storage Wars.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to add?
Nope, I'm good.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. We're having a really good time with it. It's the Agent's Handbook and Need to Know with the GM screen are on sale now. They're going out to retailers through retail distribution through Studio 2 Publishing as our sales agent for that. So if you're at a game store and you want one of these, tell them to ask around. And if
they say it's out of print, if they say it's out of print, they're lying.
But it's arcdream.com, arcdream.com is sort of our main website. But look up Google Arc Dream, Google Pagan Publishing, Google Delta Green, and you can learn tons more.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
You bet. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Nice meeting you.
All right.
All right, adios.
See you guys later.
Bye.